Today is July 28th, 2014. My name is Elissa Kaplan, and I'm here today to interview Dan Cassell from Stamford, Connecticut, for the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
First, let me ask you a little bit about yourself. Where and when were you born?
I was born in 1920 in I guess where was I born? I was born in 1920 in Brooklyn, in New York. And in 1924, 25, we moved to a place in Coney Island called Seagate. And I pretty much grew up there, went to public schools there. I became involved in high school in the art program, and that sort of directed my career in graphic arts.
Oh my, but before we get there, tell us who your parents were and where they came from.
My father was born in Russia, in Lithuania, and he came here in, I think, 01 or 02, and he met my mother and married my mother in about 15 or 16, I don't remember.
Well, you weren't there.
No. And
What was your father's name?
Baruch Chaim. The English version was Bernard.
And his last name?
Cassell.
Cassell.
Same
As
name
you.
it is. Or they refer to it as Cassell. And my mother was a Duberstein, and she was the first of 8 children.
Big family.
And my grandfather invented the ice cream cone. And
Wow.
yeah. And
How did that come about? Was that here or back in Lithuania?
it was in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And he sold it to the National Biscuit Company for $1 million.
Wow, that's exciting. So you were on Coney Island all this time, right?
I was in Seagate, Coney
Right.
Island. And it was a very large family. They lived in Brooklyn, and we celebrated the Jewish holidays at Grandma's house in Brooklyn. They used to send a car to pick us up, take us to Brooklyn. Like most families, everybody's split all over.
Spread out. Well, just for the record, what was your mother's name?
Her name was Anna.
Anna
Yeah,
Dubenstein.
Duberstein.
Duberstein.
Matter of fact, my granddaughter's name is Anna, who
Oh,
was here just yesterday. She just went home.
nice, nice. So you have a nice memory of your
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
So your grandfather was either a good cook or very creative. But what did your father do for a living?
He started out importing Russian merchandise. He had a friend in Russia. Then when when Stalin came in, he was killed. And that ended my father's importing business. And he was a writer, and he had a lot of friends from Europe, and he used to sell carbon paper and ribbons. And it was not a very lucrative situation, but he was very intellectual. And people would come to visit him who were scientists and people who were very well known in various ways. And it was always somebody strange, but my father was very well liked, and at least growing up, that's how my brothers and I thought of him.
Must have been a very rich experience for you as a child to have all these people around.
No, it was Depression time. Everybody was poor. My brother was, my older brother was a very good athlete, and he used to go to Coney Island to play ball, and he just died about a year or two ago.
Did you have other siblings?
Hmm?
Did you have other brothers and sisters?
Yeah, there were 3 of us.
And you're the oldest?
I'm the middle.
You're the middle,
Yeah,
middle child.
Yeah. The youngest one died, David died when,
20 years ago.
I don't know, 5 years, 6 years ago.
A while back.
Yeah.
So you got to go to a special high school, or you got to study art in high school? How did that work?
Abraham Lincoln High School, which was in the end of Coney Island, had a very unusual teacher by the name of Leon Friend.
And
his book is here somewhere.
And you have his book. Afterwards, we're going to take a look at it, and we'll take a picture of it. So this teacher took an interest in you, or you made friends with him?
Leon Friend was a very strict, tough guy. He never called anybody by their first name. It was Cassell. It was Beckel, I think, which was my best friend. And we won almost every contest, art and design contests, everywhere. And we were a very good school for those purposes. And one of the best known was a guy who died just a few years ago by the name of Alex Steinweiss. Alex Steinweiss designed all the album covers for CBS.
Oh my.
Yeah, he lived up in Florida, and I used to talk to him a great deal. And there were a number of well-known graphic people who came out of that high school primarily because of this Leon Friend.
Unbelievable. So at the end of high school, this takes you near the beginning of World War II. Tell us what it was like when you graduated high school. What did you go on to do then? Did you get a job, or were you
Yes.
able to go to college?
No, I got a job in New York. Let's see what happened. Billy had a job at a place called Sterling Advertising Agency, and he got me in there.
So you were one of the madmen, huh?
Yeah, and it was that time. And then we started our own company. No, that's after the war.
Yeah, that's after. So how did you happen to serve in the military?
It was 1945, I think. And my mother was quite ill, and with cancer. And my father and I were living with my younger brother, and my mother died. And Ezra, my brother Ezra, I had to get him to come home.
Because he was overseas?
No, he was working somewhere in the Bronx or something.
Oh, okay, so yeah.
And he came home, and this is a little confusing. So, when did my father die? At any rate, when he came home, my father was sick. My father was, my mother had already died.
Okay.
And my father was sick, and he gets a letter from the government to report to duty for 1 year. And I said to Ezra, that, for 1 year, why don't we go to the draft board and see if they'll take me instead of you?
Aha.
Because he was making funeral arrangements for my father, and he said, fine. We went to the draft board. They said, one of you has to go. And I said, I'll go for 1 year.
And so the draft board was in New York City, right? You had to go.
It was in Coney Island.
Oh, you was close, okay.
And so I was drafted, and my brother called his friend Fat Fink and said, Fat, you're going in the army with my kid brother. Keep an eye on him.
How old were you?
I was 25. And so Fat Fink and I were drafted. And my brother took care of funeral arrangements for my father. And I was in Virginia. I don't know where Fat was. He was somewhere else. And
So this was the Army?
yeah,
Okay.
1941.
1941, the Army.
And
The war has, America's just gotten into the war.
well, we had but there were two other guys, and I borrowed somebody's car from Richmond, Virginia, to go to see the football game in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting there at this game, and I had a little portable radio that my friends had given me as a gift when I went off to the Army. And I had this little portable radio, and we were listening to the game and watching the game in the stands. And we were in uniform. And all of a sudden, on the loudspeaker at the stadium, they announced that Pearl Harbor has been bombed.
Oh, wow.
And all military personnel report back to their base immediately. So me and my friend Archie had to go find the third guy who was somewhere else.
With all those people.
Yeah, he was in a hotel with some lady that he encountered. And we found him, and he was a very good driver. And he drove the car. We had borrowed this car. And it took us about 4 hours to drive back to our base. When we got there, they were calling out regional guard. And in those days, the uniform had leggings from World War One. And we were issued carbines, and I was guarding a reservoir there, and within a couple of days I was on a railroad train heading west with many other soldiers, and at every stop they would call names out for people to get off the train and report to some army camp. And I ended up in Goodfellow Field in Texas, and San Angelo. And I was there for about 3 years. And
In Texas.
in San Angelo, Texas. And then I was sent out on a scrap iron drive where some 10 trucks and 40 guys would go from ranch to ranch to pick up scrap iron for the war effort. And it was every place we went, people, you know, the cowboys see a soldier, we're gonna have lunch, come on in. You know, we would find a place to have lunch, which was a big ranch, and we would help them bring in their horses, you know, and it a long ways from the war.
Oh, and wow,
And
wow.
then finally, I was sent to Norfolk, in Texas, an army post in Texas.
Fort Hood? Fort Hood?
No, I forgot.
One of them.
It was for combat training, and I learned how to kill people with my hands and how to hit them back here in combat. It was incredible. Next thing you know, I'm on a train heading towards Seattle, and for some more combat training. Every place I went, I was how to learn how to shoot M1s and whatnot. And finally, I was put on a troop ship. It took us like 3 weeks across the Pacific. There was like 25 or 30 troop ships heading toward wherever the war was at the time.
Right.
And finally arrived at Okinawa, and we had to come down the sides of the ship and get into one of these LSTs, landing ship tanks, and into the, and we landed under fire. There was fire all around us. And I'll never forget, there was one guy on the shore who had lost a leg, and he was standing there laughing at us recruits. We were on the fire. He was just standing there waiting to be evacuated.
He knew he was going home.
And from that point on, every place we went, there was a little mound with the words "dead Jap." So we made sure to walk around that. And it was pretty rough situation. And then came the atom bomb. And do you want me? Oh, okay. Then we dropped the atom bomb, and there was we also had enormous storms, weather-wise. And on the one hand, we were concerned about the Japanese who would fly in with their they were a three-seater and commit harikari.
Yeah, the kamikaze pilots.
Kamikaze, yeah. And it was every night. It was 50 caliber bullets going over our heads because the Japanese would come out of the caves. They were hiding in caves, and they would come in and they would shoot at us, and we would. It was constant every night. There was battles going on.
So when did you get to the Japanese arena? You were there for a few months before the atom bomb, or a year, or was it a long time?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, it sounds like it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
What was your role in your unit? What were you doing?
The quartermaster corps.
And what was your job?
We would supply rations to the soldiers, and there was all kinds of confusion constantly as to what we're supposed to do. And but I remember one time, one of the guys in my outfit brought in a Japanese soldier, and a Marine, an American Marine, saw it and was really annoyed. And he said, "What the hell are you doing?" He says, he surrendered. places, and the American Marine just killed him right in front of us.
Wow. So you were supposed
This
to
was a little different than the European war.
theater, yeah. So you were supposed to be, as quartermaster, kind of behind the scenes, but it sounds like you were on the front lines.
We were by being in the quartermaster corps, whenever supplies of food or whatever, what they called K rations, came to us and we would distribute it. And a lot of fun.
Sounds pretty scary. Let me take you back to the beginning for just a minute, all the way back to Richmond. You left home, you had grown up in the New York City area, and suddenly you find yourself in Virginia and then on your way to Texas. How was that different for you?
It wasn't different. I did what I was told. I've been in the army, and there was a group of guys, the last of whom died just recently.
Right.
And we played a lot of baseball together, and we went on the scrap iron drive together, and the guy who was the sergeant of the group, the guy who just passed away, was a guy by the name of Don Jacoby, and one of the Texas guys said to me, "Boy, Dad, your friend Don Jacoby, he sure don't like me." I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Because I called him a goddamn Brooklyn Jew." He says, "He has good reason to dislike you." There was, people from all different areas. This is in Texas.
Right.
And it was not like Coney Island.
Right. So did you find that people were anti-Semitic or just...
Oh yeah, everybody was anti-Semitic. Everybody. There was. I had one incident in a taxi cab, but coming back to the Goodfellow Field. I was in town with some friends, and there was two guys from the medical corps sitting in the back, and I was sitting in the front. And he made the cab came to a stoplight or something, and these guys lurched forward as I turned around and whacked him. And when we got out of the car, I was sure I was in for a brawl. But they ran away. They were medic guys, and they went to the unit. That was the way it was.
Did you, did the Army or any of the local people provide for you in a Jewish way, like holidays or anything? Passover Seders?
Yeah. I was not receptive to that at that time, except that my friend Don Jacoby, who was Irish and Catholic, and he got after me. He says, "Why don't you say whatever you have to say?" And so I did. It was in Texas. There was a guy who owned a restaurant who was Jewish, and he talked with a southern Texas drawl, and I I became friendly with him. But no, I had very little of that. The only time I had a Jewish situation, my friend Billy, who I grew up with, and who lives in Bridgeport now in a senior citizens. Billy's sister, Sylvia, married a guy by the name of Dave Block from Coney Island. And after the atom bomb dropped, I got a letter from home telling me that Dave Block was on Aishima, which is a little island off of Okinawa. And that if you can get to see him, he was a pilot of three. It was a small airplane that would drop one bomb and go back to its base. And so when I was told that Dave was stationed on Aishima, I went down to the air field, and I asked around, anybody going to Aishima? And one guy said, I am. Want to ride? I said, yeah, hop. He said, hop in. So I hopped in. And we flew over to Aishima. And I went to the orderly room, which is and I said, I'm a friend of Lieutenant Block. Is there any chance that I can see him? He said, how good a friend are you? I said, very good friend for civilian life. He said, well, he was just killed this morning.
Oh my.
On a takeoff. The plane that he was in was crashed before it could take off and killed 3 people that were in it. And then they said, please don't notify his family until you give us like 2 weeks before you notify his family, so that they can get that news from us, not from you. And then I found a guy who was a chaplain, and I told him about it, and he said, you better wait so that the family is notified first. And I did. And I wrote this long letter about what I knew of how Dave died. And Billy was in the Merchant Marine, and it just coincidentally, he was home at that time. His ship had come back, and we had a girlfriend who lives in Florida, or I still speak to, and her father was a gambler, and his name was Tim Kaplan, and he knew everybody. He knew. You asked him, and he knows everybody, and who, by the way, became extremely religious.
Oh my.
Yeah. Billy went to see him to see what it can do to get more information. And he had contacts in Washington, and that's how Billy got more information about Dave. Sylvia was pregnant, and Dave had been home on furlough or something before he went back. And Sylvia remarried, and they had 4 or 5 kids, and this is
How it goes. Let me take you back to Japan. You were there when the atom bomb was dropped.
yes.
How did people in the army get information about what was actually happening in the war? Who told you? How did you find out?
When the atom bomb dropped, it was announced. We were getting ready to invade Japan.
And that would be you personally. You were going to be part of that.
Yeah, well,
You were there.
we were all getting ready to invade Japan. And it was announced that we dropped a bomb that destroyed a whole city. And of course, that was ridiculous. One bomb.
You couldn't believe it.
No, it was figured it was somebody made something up, and we were getting ready to go. And then the second bomb dropped. There were 2 cities, and at this point, we figured, that was it, and I had no idea what that meant as far as what we were gonna do or whatever. Everything was very confusing and uncertain.
When did you actually find out what an atom bomb was or is? I mean, when did you actually start to know what this really meant?
When the first bomb dropped and word got out that this one bomb destroyed that city, it was announced that we had developed a bomb that destroyed the city, and everybody was shooting into the sky, and the general got on the microphone, or I've forgotten how and he said, "Stop all fire." The sky was full of bombs, of everybody shooting everything up.
Mm-hmm.
It was dangerous. It was an awful situation. And of course, nobody liked General, what was the name of this? It was the general in the Pacific.
MacArthur? Oh, MacArthur?
MacArthur. Yeah. General MacArthur, claimed all kinds of honors. He and Harry Truman didn't get along at all. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, Alice and I were on a cruise, and we came to Manila, and they reenacted enacted. It was as part of the cruise. A war scene, you know,
Oh, my.
and Alice got lost. I had a hell of a time trying to find her because it was black.
Ooh.
We walked through a tunnel, but she
Oh, my.
survived. But MacArthur was, he wanted to be president of the United States.
And didn't have a good reputation with his soldiers, right?
No,
How soon after that did you get to go home? After the bomb fell, did that mean that, did you think fighting would just stop, or?
yeah. I, let's see, how did that take place? I had my own little Jeep, and we didn't know who was gonna go home and when, but I had trying to think of how this thing worked out. There was there was very little activity there, and the only problem was the weather, very, very severe weather. And one time,
This was like monsoons, rain, and?
yeah, and we went into some kind of a unit that we moved to get out of the storm.
Mhm.
There were 12 of us in this little, like a kitchen, and we kept the door open just to get air for the whole night, and everybody took turns opening and closing that door. And then the next morning, everything was leveled. It was really,
I'm going down.
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom for a minute.
Okay. The rest of the story.
As an aside, one of my clients after the war
Mhm.
was Time Life company, and I was working on a project for Life. I think it was Life magazine, and my client was explaining the project to me, and he said, let me get the copyright of the guy who wrote it in this meeting. So in walks a guy by the name of Bill Yamaguchi. And he sticks his hand out to shake. This is after the war.
Mhm.
I'm a civilian, and here is a guy by the name of Bill Yamaguchi putting his hand out for me to shake. Well, I did.
But how did you feel?
It was emotionally, it was not a very comfortable thing. Turned out to be one of my best friends. He recently died. He was living in, after the war, Time magazine sent him to Japan to develop relations with the Japanese. And I then became very friendly with him. I took him up to the club to have dinner one time with his wife. And we got a letter for the company that I'm with, my son-in-law, Zippo. We got a letter from somebody in Japan. And I said to him, can you find out who this person is, and, you know, if they want to buy a product, I want to, he says, first of all, he says, I'm too expensive for you. He says, but I got an idea. My daughter Susie lives in Tokyo with her Jewish husband. I'll call them and or send them a letter or something. And then a little while later, Bill sends me a copy of the letter that his son-in-law, Steve, sent to him, and it said, "Dear Dad." This is not a very stable, it's an architectural firm, and they're not very stable, and I don't think I would do business with them.
So was Mr. Yamaguchi a Japanese American or
Yes,
Japanese?
yes, no, he was Japanese American.
But he looked Japanese and had a
Yeah,
Japanese
but he was put
name.
in the camp that Roosevelt or Truman had in California. And he went to Yale. And he graduated at Yale. He was a very bright guy and a wonderful guy.
Well, let's get you out of Japan, out of the Far East. So you got orders to come back to the U.S. How did you get out of the war? Or out of the army?
They had a point system based on several things, combat time, whatnot. And I was in, I had built we picked up lumber from the villages, and my bunkmate, Bill, guy from Boston, an Irish guy, he and I built a little house for ourselves. You know, when the war was over, and we had all these storms and whatnot, and we had a very comfortable. I had acquired a Jeep so I can drive around, and waiting for whatever the United States government wanted me to do.
And this was where was it that you were stationed?
This is on Okinawa.
Oh, you were on Okinawa.
Yeah, and finally some guy walks into my tent and said, "Anybody here by the name of Cassell?" I said, "That's me." He says, "Pack up, you're going home." I was the first one in my unit. Of course,
You must have been very excited.
well, I wasn't sure I had been engaged to somebody. And what was the name of that family that you knew from Far Rockaway?
From Illinois?
Huh?
From Illinois?
No,
Far
from
Rockaway.
Far Rockaway.
So you were engaged to her. How did
You
you?
mean Florence?
Huh?
You mean Florence? David Schoenberg's?
David Schoenberg.
Yeah.
It was
His
his
sister was.
sister-in-law or something.
Is it Dorothy? Dottie?
So you were. How did you keep track? How did you keep in touch with her during the war? Were you a big letter writer?
I don't really remember.
Okay. Anyway, so you were. So you didn't know you were engaged, but you weren't sure you were engaged, right? Or
I had no idea. As a matter of fact, it was quite some time later. I was married and had 3 kids and whatnot. And I had a meeting with somebody who was gonna use our Anaforms cartoon. You remember that Anaform? And the lawyers were discussing it or something, and this other guy turns out to be
Was
the
that her son?
husband.
Huh? Was it her husband or her son?
My husband. And he was really pissed at me.
uh-oh.
I mentioned, jokingly, I said, I was married to your wife. Something.
Oh, interesting. So how did you meet your wife? So you got home. How did you meet your wife?
The wife that I
That you managed to marry, right?
my wife died, her husband died, and we were over at Pam's house, and
And that's how. But what about your first wife? How did you meet her? This is way back in your youth,
Blind date.
huh?
Wasn't it a blind date with
Yeah,
Billy?
blind date with Billy.
after you got
Billy.
back from the war,
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah, long after.
Long-
And Billy and Irene wanted to go to a movie in New York. And Billy said to me, "Why don't you take that girl from Colorado?" I said, just to have a date so that we could be a foursome. So I said, "Oh, okay." And I called her. I said, "How'd you like to go to a movie?" And she said, "Well, that sounds interesting." And so we got into a cab, we picked her up, and Billy says, she's a good-looking kid, why don't you marry her? I said, "Okay, you want to get married?" She said, "Sure."
That was easy.
So we get into the car, into the cab, and Billy says to the cab driver, "Forget the movie. There's a bar over there, the Menem Shabar. We want to go there." So, well, playing along, and Sandy played along, and Billy excuses himself. So I want to go to the men's room. And he disappears, and he comes back, and the phone rings on the bar. And he says, Cassell? Anybody hear that name of Cassell? I says, that's some mistake. He says, somebody said he wanted to talk to Danny Cassell. That seems silly. I mean, so you want me to hang it up? I said, no, let me have it. I took the phone, and it was a friend by the name of Dave Smitten. And Smitty says, hey, Case, congratulations, I hear you're getting married. And that started it off.
There you go. So when you came back from Okinawa to the States, you must have come back to the West Coast, right? And did you go to and you were able to get out of the Army? Did you go to work, or did you get to?
No, I was shipped to New Jersey,
Oh,
Camp Dix,
oh my.
on the train,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I was discharged.
And this is 1945? Might have been 46, because you said you were 5 years. 46, probably.
46, probably.
Yeah. And then did you go to work, or did you had the GI Bill, did you go back to school?
Yeah, I got a job and was fired at Fairchild Publications. And then Billy had a job at a place called Sterling Advertising Agency, and I think he was getting like $5 a week or something like that. And his boss was a guy by the name of Packy. Paderewski was his name, but everybody called him Packy. And Billy asked him if he could put his friend to work. And so I did. I worked in the bullpen, which is where all the guys sit and paste up stuff. They don't do that anymore, computers. And after I was working there for a while, then there was a guy who was Ezra, my brother Ezra, dated his daughter, and he was a graphic designer, and he wanted to quit graphic design. He wanted to play tennis.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to work for him for 1 year, and then I owned the business.
Oh. You bought them out? You bought your own business?
We had an arrangement in which I would work for him for 1 year, and he would play tennis. And that was the end of it. And I started what became Comart, and Billy joined me. Billy was working in Boston at the time, and I was doing very well. I had some pharmaceutical clients.
Yeah, who were your clients? Who were some of your clients?
Little Laboratories. It was a major one. and all kinds of times. We had problems with a guy who was brilliant in the pharmaceutical field, and but he was quite gay, and in those days that was not something that you could tolerate, and
So you got rid of him?
well, yeah, he was killed.
Ooh,
His gay friends killed him,
ooh, ooh.
and it was a
Is
rough.
that Vince you're talking about?
No, this was what was his name?
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I
okay,
just-
so, yeah, well, all because of your high school teacher, right?
Oh, yeah.
All because of him. What did your Army experience give you for your life? What kind of life lessons, what did you get out of those 5 years of your life? What do you take with you?
It's hard to answer. I mean, I had a pretty good life. I can't answer that.
Well, you certainly kept in touch with a lot of people,
Yes.
and you made a lot of friends, and you kept in touch, and
Yeah, well, this Don Jacoby who just passed away, he, we were in constant touch. And
did you go to reunions, or?
Alice and I went to his, he had a 90th birthday party or something like that. We went up to up to
Where he lives.
yeah.
Mhm, Are there any other stories you haven't told us that you'd like to share?
About what?
About anything in your life? Bring out your best?
No, I had a pretty good life.
And so you have how many children and how many grandchildren?
I have 3 children. Each of them produced 2. And one of my grandchildren. I'm confused. Is Andy?
I wonder how you met Alice.
Huh?
How about how you met Alice? How you met Alice?
How did you meet Alice, your current wife?
She had just lost her husband, and I was at a dinner party with
Louise.
Louise and Pam, and she was there, and we got chatting, and the rest is,
Is
And
his-
now you have how many children and grandchildren?
I must say, I don't know if you know this, but my son, Andy, was just named
Professor,
Huh?
Professor?
A professor of
journalism.
Journalism?
Economics.
Journalism, economics
economics,
at
Penn State.
Penn State. Wow. So you have all these children and grandchildren. What's your best advice to the next generation?
I don't give advice.
Live your own life, right?
I live my life, and I happen to be very fortunate in that they all have done quite well.
Well,
With
Dan,
scholarships, with whatever.
and I can see that learning and action are important in your family. Well, Dan Cassell, thank you very much for this interview, and thank you for your service.